Shavua Tov. This is Motzei Shabbat, Parashat Kedoshim 5776. It is the 7th of Iyyar, and it is the 15th Yahrzeit of my dearly missed mother, Fradel Rachel Bat Mordechai Yosef Aleha Shalom. And I'd like to take a few minutes to reflect on some of the things that my mother did that had an impact upon me and her children and grandchildren. And this video is very much for the members of our family, but anyone else who wants to listen in. The question I'd like to look at tonight is just simply what was important to my mother. What did I pick up from my mother that was important to her? I'd like to reflect on a few of those things. First of all, my mother, as my brother said once, was our first Rebbe. We learned what it meant to be a Jew from her initially, and then our parents, my father should be well, sent us on to yeshiva. My mother in particular was very proud that her children were devoted to Torah and a life of mitzvos, and carrying on the tradition and going in the footsteps of her grandparents, who were referred to as Bubby and Zeta Reichel and Bubby and Zeta Fishman. And I was privileged to know three of my great-grandparents. My mother's paternal grandfather had passed away considerably earlier, but we knew three of her grandparents. And she would tell us stories about them, and it was important to her to tell us about them. So about her Zeta Reichel, Isidore Reichel, Yitzchak ben Yosef Halevi, we knew that he was a Talmid Chacham, a person that Rabbanim in the community in the Bronx would come and consult with and talk with him. And he didn't have many books, not many Sfarim at all. So his Beis Medrash became the New York Public Library. The New York Public Library has this very significant Judaica collection, and that's where he would sit and learn. And he would write down little passages of what he learned on little scraps of paper, what my mother called the kvitlach, and he would, when he would come home, he would sit with her, and he would teach her what he had written, and he would give her that piece of paper. And my mother treasured that. That was important to her. And every once in a while, she would take out these kvitlach, and she would ask us if we could read them to her and explain them to her. And I have those kvitlach, and I've started organizing them, and I hope, with God's help, to be able to put it together, at least for members of the family, to see what were the things that Zeta Reichel taught my mother that we can still feel the impact of those things even now. And she told us about her Zeta Fishman and his devotion to Shabbos. His economic situation was quite dire. And one Shabbos, when he was walking in the street, he saw a $5 gold coin. In those days, that was a lot of money. Can't pick it up on Shabbos. But he stood with his foot on the coin until after Shabbos. And she told us about Bubby Fishman and how she had her shrouds, her burial shrouds, hanging in her closet. And my mother saw them. And so this was a matter of Yirah Shamayim, really a sense of shall we say, the awareness of one's purpose in life, and that God has our lives timed out, and that we have to be prepared for the transition from this life to the next. These were all important ideas, which my mother communicated not through talking about the ideas, but just by telling the story. Shabbos was Yontiv, Shul, these are all things that were very important to my mother. And without a doubt, family was central to my mother, and my mother was central to the family. We would always gather at her table in her house, and she had Mesiras Nefesh. She really gave her all for the family, and she loved each person in their way, and she spoke of her family as her jeweled crown. And on each of the simchas, that there would be a different jewel at the top of the crown, the center of the crown. She knitted booties for all the great-grandchildren to come, and may there be many of them more in the future. Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, was very important to her. My mother, Alei Shalom, and Yibadol L'chaim, my father, sacrificed greatly to take us all to Israel, and we had the privilege of being in Israel in 1966, and then again in 1969, to be able to experience the extraordinary change that befell the Jewish people were blessed with. My mother kept a bag of earth from the land of Israel, a number of bags of earth. In those days, it wasn't taken for granted that the funeral directors would have earth from the land of Israel to put in a grave. My mother had a stash of earth from the land of Israel, and it wasn't just at the end that we should be connected to the land of Israel, but even when we were there, she would even collect stones. A little stone it was important to her to connect to Eretz Yisrael, and there was a lot of Israeli type of art hanging in the house and scenes from the land of Israel. And she recounted to us how, as a young person, she was listening to the radio as the votes were being taken in the UN on the partition and the founding of the State of Israel. And just to conclude this brief video, a few days before she passed away, when she couldn't barely speak, and she seemed really not of this world. She said in a very, one of the only things she could say, she said, Mashiach is coming soon. And she spoke about Mashiach. She spoke about the coming of the Messiah in a very fervent way. May her memory be a blessing to us. May we each remember the things that she did and said, and that she held dear, that we've been able to imbibe from her, to be able to take the very best that she gave us and to pass it on in a way that future generations will be blessed with it. Yehi Zichra Baruch. Shavua Tov.